Hey there, fellowship family. Welcome to your one-stop shop for all things church life. I am Mark Francis, once again, your host for today. We are involved in a small mini-series here at FBC called Hearing the Call. And I have some special guests here who might have a story about hearing a call, but I want to get to know you guys first. Welcome to the podcast, Dennis and Ivette McNutt.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
How are you guys? It has been a while.
Yeah.
You guys don't even call this your official church home anymore.
I know.
So, man, why am I
It
having...
still feels like home, though. It feels like coming back home.
That's true. Why am I having people who don't call this their church home on a podcast for fellowship family? Well, we will find that out. There's plenty of you guys who have been long-time FBCers who watch and listen to this, but there's plenty of you also who are somewhat newer to Fellowship Bible Church. And... it's funny how COVID had a way of kind of shaking things up and shifting things around. And we've got a lot of new attenders here and new audience members to this podcast. So for those of you guys that don't know the McNutts, we're going to get to know you a little bit. So I'll start by just asking the easy questions about you guys. Tell us, where are you guys from? And I got to find out, how'd you guys even meet? I'm sure there's got to be a story behind this, right?
How did we meet? Yeah, that goes back a while.
Well, I'm originally from New York.
Okay.
And I'm originally from Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
And she had moved to Florida in her high school years, right? You were
right.
12, 13 years old. And I went to Florida when I joined the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And so went through boot camp and was going through some training schools down there. And while I was in my training schools, we met. She was working at a Target not too far off of the base, and so we met there through a friend of mine that his fiance worked there, and so we had stopped in. And
hunting down the Target workers, yeah.
Right.
And it was a blind date for me.
It was a blind date for her, so yeah. So the whole story we won't get into all that. Yeah. But I convinced my buddy's fiance to talk this lovely girl that I saw working there at Target into coming out on a double date with us.
Oh.
And so she successfully wrangled Evie to come out on this blind date with this strange guy.
And I was pleasantly surprised.
So it was blind for her. It wasn't blind for me. I was behind the scenes trying to work that out.
And then just things progressed from there.
Right.
Yeah. Things progressed from there. A year later, we were engaged.
Our anniversary is coming up, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Anniversary, 32 years.
Awesome.
We're married 32 years ago, January.
Yeah.
And how many kids now?
5 kids.
Yep.
3 grandkids, another grandkid on the way, so 4 grandkids.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Nice. So who's having another grandkid?
Our son Darren.
Darren, all right.
Yeah. So
Cool.
we have our 5 kids, our 2 oldest are married. Both of them now with 2 kids.
Right.
And then the next 2 are in college. So Gloria and Elena are in college, and we have 1 left still at home, Marissa.
Mm-hmm.
She's our youngest.
Cool.
So she's a 10th grader in high school. So
I don't view you guys as grandparents, but what do they call you? What do they call you? What are y'all's names?
I'm abuela.
She's abuela, and I'm grumpy.
Grumpy.
Grumpy grandpa.
The least grumpy person.
Grumpy grandpa. Yep.
Right.
Well, abuela fits. So that's obviously Spanish word. So what are your roots there?
Well, I'm Puerto Rican and Colombian.
Puerto Rican and Colombian.
From New York, and just married this Navy guy, and we've been on a wonderful adventure, and it's been so neat to see where the Lord has brought us.
Yeah. So what brought you guys to Winchester then?
Yeah, I got out of the Navy after about almost 10 years, and got a job here in Winchester, working at HP Hood here in town, building that plant.
Mm-hmm.
And within a year of moving here and starting that job, we had started attending Fellowship Bible Church. So that was in the year 2000.
Okay.
So we had started attending, and God really used FBC in our lives in so many testimonies we can share just in our personal lives of discipleship and growing in Christ and being discipled. Just a neat thing that God was using FBC in our lives. I mean, even from initially, when we were first attending for a while, we were kind of those people. We'd kind of come in on a Sunday morning with our 2 little kids, get there late, leave early. Back in those days, it was before the construction of the new church was done, so we'd get there late, and it was always overflow. Like, it was packed. So we'd be sitting out in the lobby, which is now the children's check-in area. That was the lobby back then.
Or there's the library. So we joined and came the same time.
Right, that same time,
2000.
yeah.
So we're probably sitting in cheap
out,
seats with you guys too.
You sit down in the cheap seats listening to the sermon on the speaker, and then we'd take off.
Yep.
And but yeah, just back then, a lovely lady that headed up the children's ministry asked us to get involved and just serve and as greeters,
right.
And and so it was just things like that. People inviting us into their community group, and then just people pouring into our lives. Coming in and discipling us over the years and growing in huge ways. So
and over the years, as you progress in serving, you're also growing at the same time and connecting with others. Yeah. But as you were growing, then somehow God tapped you to come on staff at Fellowship Bible Church.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Right. Fast forward, 16 years later, something like that. In the meantime, guys like Mark Carey and Don Hartog that were meeting with me personally, and just a lot of discipleship, and had given me a lot of teaching opportunities in the adult learning centers, and teaching classes with Don and on my own, and with others. And it was neat. For a few years, Mark or Don or some of the other pastors would ask, have you ever thought about going into the ministry, vocationally? And I was like, well, that was, I'd love to. Like, if God opened that door, I'd pray that I would, have the courage to walk through it. You know?
Yeah.
So, but just never thought that would happen. I had a good job out in community and was happy serving where we were, and then at the end of 2016, I'll share this little story because I see it as a God thing, but it's kind of it's funny the way Mark Carey addressed it is kind of funny looking back on it, but I think it was God who orchestrated it. But through those couple of years when they were talking to me about it, and just saying, well, we'll see what opportunity God opens up. And so I was praying about it, and, Evie was praying about it, and something we were thinking about. And, one of these times I was meeting with Mark, I came in and we were doing a study through a book, and but he said, well, before we get started, he said, I want you to look at this. And he slides a piece of paper across the table. Well, behind the scenes, my prayer, the short version of my prayer to God had been like, God, if you're going to call me into the ministry, make it black and white. And what I meant, and God knew what I meant by that, because it was just the short version of my prayer, was make it clear. Yeah. Like I don't know what it means to be called. Like, is there going to be a burning bush in my backyard? What does it mean to be called to the ministry? And so for me, it was like, just make it black and white. Like, make it something I have to say yes or no to. It was kind of my prayer request. And so when Mark slides this piece of paper across and I pick it up and look at it, it was a job description for a youth pastor. And so I'm reading that, and all I could hear, in my thoughts was, you asked for it in black and white. So looking at a black and white, job description for it. And so, that was, so Mark talked to me about it, and the elders had talked about it, because at that time there was a pastoral shift going on with, John Avery moving into family ministry, and John Morrison back then going into the counseling, and so they'd been looking for a youth pastor. And so that was the start of it, and coming home and Evie and I talking about it and praying about it, it was like, okay, now's the time. We say yes or no. And if we had time to get into all of the God things from that, I mean, God is so faithful through all that. Like, we, as Evie and I took some time to meet and talk about it over that time, we had all of these things like, God's gonna have to work this out, and God's gonna have to work out. There were all these things like, all right, God,
all these wish lists of like, if all these things happen,
these things,
then,
like, Lord, for this to happen, like, there's all of these hurdles that need to fall, and just God's faithfulness to that, and the way that He provided through that time. And so we came on staff then, and January 2017 as the youth pastor.
It's neat to always look back. Because you can see God's
Remember
faithfulness through there, which then can lead you into the unknown of the future. And like, okay, if God got me through that, then
yeah, how quick we are to forget, right?
Right.
So as soon as the next challenge comes up, you start stressing and worrying about it, and you forget, like, okay, look at what he's already done.
Yeah.
Right. And I was going to add that for me, the peace that goes in making that decision, and to know that we felt, I felt prepared. And I know that you were prepared because you were being discipled and so on, but I felt like we were prepared for this because of the God's faithfulness in growing us here at this church.
And so what was going on behind the scenes for you? Because when you got married, back in those days of Florida meeting at Target, could you have ever imagined that you'd be married to a pastor of a church?
No.
So, take us through kind of just what did that progression look like for you?
From that first day, I just, I loved that he was a biker. That's as far as my thought was. That he was this
motorcycles, bicycles.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I thought that was pretty adventurous and amazing, and I loved him. And so throughout the years, just having, going through the Navy and places that we were going was different from how I grew up and where I was at. And so to be here at Fellowship, the Lord brought us here, and we just knew that this is where we were supposed to stay. And then we even had an opportunity to go to Pennsylvania and live there at one point. But it was through the discipleship here that I thought, why would anybody want to leave here? But then we got to a point where I felt like the Lord is saying, but you're trusting me. And so then I was like, okay, Lord, if you want us to go to Pennsylvania, fine, I'll go. And then Dennis made the decision, no, actually I feel like we're going to stay. And so we ended up staying. And I don't know, I just feel like through that trust and that obedience and that we grew, and then the Lord opened up another door. So I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to go where you send me. And so I really felt at peace to go to the next step.
So it didn't stop there. The calling, I guess, of ministry isn't just with youth at FBC, but things progressed where you had a few spots to teach from the pulpit and have some sermons. And at the same time, there's a church that is being planted by FBC down in Shenandoah County. Walk us through kind of then those next progressions of God's calling for you, Dennis, I guess, of leading you into then a ministry that's not even here at Fellowship Bible Church.
Yeah, from my side of it, just personally, I mean, once again, it's a testament to God's working and the mission of FBC and how seriously the FBC takes that of preparing disciples of Jesus Christ and deploying.
Right? Yeah, right.
And so the pastoral staff here, even like Mark Carey, the opportunities that he gives other people to fill the pulpit and to develop them, and I look at now and seeing a young guy like Caleb, up in having those opportunities, really develop a young person into and to have those opportunities and to see what God's going to do with that. It's really is a neat heart of the elders here and the ministry here at FBC. And so for me, that was, part of just them pouring into me and developing me. And in the meantime, I'd heard of this church plant that was going on, and it definitely caught my attention. Like I was paying attention to what was going on. It was interesting, but it wasn't really in my, like God didn't have it in my circles. My ministry was with the youth. I didn't really have direct involvement with what was going on at Shenandoah, because as you're aware, that was in development for a few years,
right?
Before leading up to that, and then COVID happens, and okay, we still going to progress with this church plant, or are we not? And the elders here just saying, well, if the doors open, we'll keep walking through them, and so I was paying attention to that as they were working on that, and people were praying about that. So it was neat to see FBC involved in a church plant like that. Had watched the Hispanic church get going and knew those guys, and that was a blessing to watch. So it was really something that was neat to watch, but I was sort of an outsider, just like everybody else, just, watching that and praying about it and cheering it on, that kind of a thing. So as they, and guys like Scott Santmeyer and Danton Hartog can give a lot more of the background details through that season, as they were having families from Shenandoah meeting together and do little community groups. And
because ultimately the church plant still at that time was needing a pastor.
Still needing a pastor.
Danton Hartog kind of rose to the surface of saying, yes, I want to kickstart this, but he essentially said, I'm not here to be the long-term person.
Right, yeah, and that's all and once again, God's in control of all these details of even timing of things. From FBC standpoint, they were trying to plant this church, but just weren't finding that pastor. And in the meantime, Don is looking to moving out west and knows that his time is running short. Was in conversations with the elders about that, and so I think in that they're like, why don't you go down and start this? And so that, I don't know all those conversations, but at the end of the day, Don ends up going down to be the church plant pastor.
So give us a ballpark range of, you said that was near COVID, right? Yeah. Do you remember when the first kind of month of
the first
Shenandoah?
Sunday of November 2020. So that's if you remember back to 2020, that's, all the planning going through that year is the thick of COVID, and churches are closing their doors. Right. Yep. I mean, churches are closing the doors, things are open, but yet the doors keep opening for us to plant this church, which is really a neat thing.
Just even if I remember this past weekend at our church services, we gave some stats and trivia about different kind of information about churches nationwide. And the stat was about 4,500 churches closed per year. And only about 3,000 open every year. So there's just an interesting trend, especially with this COVID trend, that yet just church doors are closing and not enough are being built up to replace them. And yet here God is using FBC to grow, and then also exponentially plant a Hispanic church here in town, and then this one here in Shenandoah. And we'll continue the conversation about what that
all the
fellowship send looks like. But hearing your story is unique, from your perspective, without getting into the details of what that church planting process looked like. What was God doing with you guys? Because ultimately, you did get sent. You did go down there, and you are there now. Right. So paint that picture of the questions that would go through your mind. When did that first seed get planted? That, wow, if Don's not going to be there for too much longer, would that be us? And what does that look like?
Well, I'd say one of those big players was, Patty Hartog, and Dawn too. But Patty, she pulled us aside a few times, even right at the beginning of that, and saying, "I'm praying that you guys replace us."
Wow,
so,
really? Very direct like that. Right. Okay.
So Dawn and Patty were very much, even going down there, they, and so he mentioned that to me, and I think Patty said some to you a few times of, just so you know, I'm praying that I think you guys are the ones that need to replace us, and so that kind of planted to see, what if God does call us down there? What do we do with that? Our approach to things has always been like, if God's, I don't really have have never had a 5-year plan goals of, where's God going to have
my goal
us.
as a couple. This is where this is where I want to be in 5 years.
Right. Yeah. We don't really. It's we're just try to be content where we're at, and
very flexible.
If God's going to call us to something, then if God's calling us, then we want to be able to go. And so we weren't really trying to look towards, like, we didn't have a goal to do that or not do that. I mean, I loved being the youth pastor. Loved the kids, loved interacting with them, and that was just fine. Right. If that was where God had us.
Right.
I love that. I laugh because that's one of the things that just the Lord just blessing me with. He blessed me with 5 kids, but I know that Dennis loves children. He always wanted more, and so when he became youth pastor, I'm like, the Lord gave you 200 kids.
Perfect,
that
right?
I don't need to bear.
Got all these kids now.
And we had a nice time with those youth. But.
Yeah. Right. So
so
as seeds were being planted.
Yeah, seeds were being planted, and as that year went on, the way I jokingly refer to it, I think the elders had interviewed a few people to be Don's replacement, and couldn't find anybody, and so they got to the bottom of the barrel and said, well, how about that Dennis guy?
That's your version, right?
That's
I'm
my
sure.
version.
Yep.
But yeah, I think they, at some point in that year, it was a number of months into it, then the elders approached me, and people asked me to start considering that. And once again, our approach to it when we talked about it was, well, if this is, once again, I don't know what it means to be called by a burning bush,
right.
but it's just a sense of, do we have peace with this?
But I see a flexible heart, a willing heart to just be used as needed and as being tapped.
And we wanted to go down. We went down and visited, as I think a lot of families do. They just go down to Woodstock to kind of see what's happening down there, and that's what we did one Sunday. And I remember leaving there, and this was aside from Patty maybe saying things. I've left there feeling so like welcomed, and this was such a beautiful community that it reminded me of those beginning years when we came to fellowship, being in that even if it was in the lobby of the
small lobby,
it was
or
just
Fellowship 3,
it was just a really nice small community that was so welcoming, and we were so happy to see everybody and have good teaching, and it was warm and welcoming. So that's what my first seed was.
So you then kind of realize, okay, this is where God is calling me. So paint the picture of what that looked like. You still needed to sell your house.
Right.
You actually physically moved down to Shenandoah County.
Yeah.
You then start just putting your family in the community and in the culture. As somebody who is being transplanted, even though it was 30 miles away,
right?
If that, right?
Yeah, it wasn't 3 states away, but it still was a.
It's still a change.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that stood out to be like, yes, okay, this is what I was expecting, but then what were some of those things that, man, I did not expect this? Paint the picture from your perspective as the person who moved to a different location. What did you see?
Say, for the children and I, we homeschooled for many, many years, and we would either do co-ops or private school. So that flexibility for us is even on the children with their friends and their community. We were still flexible even with that. So my job and the children with their schooling, I didn't feel like it was a big change.
That's nice. Yeah.
And we had the conversations with the kids about it, and all of them were pretty open. And I think our one daughter was a little nervous about it, but I think for them it eased that they weren't going to their schooling wasn't going to shift. They were staying connected. And
it was the year that she drove that she was then able to come back up and see friends or come to a youth group up here that we didn't have yet down there.
Right. Yeah, so they were all on board with it. We were. It was exciting. The idea of it was exciting for us, and so we just felt like once again God was moving. I've described these years of it's like I don't know. There are lots of times in our life where we don't necessarily see God moving. We know He is, and we believe, we trust Him in it. But there are other times where I describe it as like surfing or bodyboarding in the ocean.
Yeah.
Where, there's that moment when you're trying to catch a wave, and then all of a sudden there's a moment where the wave takes over and starts carrying you, and you feel it. That's the exciting moment of doing that. And there are times in our life where God is very clearly moving, and it feels like that. It feels like, okay, we're just going to hold on to the board and see what God is doing here. And that definitely felt like that to us. Like, all right, well, all of this, once again, there was this list of, all right, God needs to do this, and this, like these things that need to happen. And once again, God's faithfulness shines through in the way He provided and took care of things and opened the doors. And
I remember you saying that you had, like, what a perfect scenario where you had a job with the resources here. All of those.
Yeah, and from a personal standpoint for me, like, I'm, like, an unusual, I'm not your typical pastor, right? In the sense that I haven't been to seminary. Right. I'm not the, I'm not the, I came into the ministry like this in my, 40s. It's a very different dynamic. I worked so for
But
me
you're
to
going
be
from a big, but you're still going from, like you're saying, a church that's big like this with all the resources and all the different pastors and
Right.
ministries and support
right
around you.
that's where the comfort level for me personally.
Yeah.
It's like it's not. I wasn't out there on my own, and that gave me and I think God's intentional with just me personally in the situation that I'm in with the church that we've been a part of and now being sent in this situation. It's like God worked all of that out to
You
work
felt like
from.
there's the support system that was around
'cause,
you. Yeah.
I was still very much connected to FBC and,
Yeah.
and the pastors here and the help and the support that they, I didn't feel like I was going off on my own to be the sole pastor of a small church. I really felt like I was, had the support to be able to do that. And that was a huge,
Well, and the beauty of it is
comfort.
that how FBC was launching it, like you said, with Scott Santmar and with
Yeah.
partnering with Don Den Hartog and partnering with other families who were ready to be a part of that church plant. I put
Right.
quotes around it, where there is a core. And,
There was a
and I
core,
think
yeah.
that's a huge just boost for any new church to get started, that you have a core crowd.
Yeah.
And it can be 4 families or it can be 14 families. But there's, and so as you arrived, you weren't necessarily planting the church.
Right.
You were coming in right at the early phases of it.
yeah,
But
right
there
at
is-
the 1 year point.
at the 1 year point.
Right.
And
so by then,
what did you see at that spot? of
Yeah,
the
by
1 year
then
mark?
between Scott and what he had done initially, and Don had worked a lot. They already had a leadership team formed. Those kind of studies going on. There was already some foundation, a lot of foundation work that had already been laid, and so now I'm coming in to be a part of that and meet the people and just kind of grow in that. And we had gone down several times before that, and so I had preached there a few times in the months leading up to that, and so already getting to know the people there, and so that, and the people there are wonderful. So
Yeah.
as far as like getting plugged in with the people, we joined a community group right away and loved the families that we were getting to meet, and so
A
it,
very smooth transition.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
felt
Absolutely.
like it felt easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
you
that's-
look at
that's
this thing-
God,
right?
right?
That's the God thing. Like
Yeah.
you look at this thing, and it seems like a mountain, and there's all right, God, there's all this, and there's all these unknowns, but then it has just been a joy.
I love
And-
how it was established so that when Dennis and I came in, we were joining what they have. It wasn't something that he led. It was something that was there that they welcomed us into, and that's all God.
And I feel like that every new church that's starting up is going to be slightly unique,
Yeah.
but it still needs a core, some principles of what it looks like to start that foundation. And
Yeah.
if we look back on historical what FBC has done, there are those core principles. And so if I transition to what this coming weekend that FBC is going to be all about, Scott Santmar is going to be preaching and talking about this mystery of what does it look like to plant churches and why are we doing it.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be this event on Sunday night. So if you're watching and listening to this before the event, get excited and come and attend and learn more about it. If you're watching and listening to this after this, you might be thinking, okay, what does God have me? So I'm going to pose the question to you guys because there's the concept of being a resident here at FBC with the Fellowship Send ministry.
Okay.
We're going to be looking and praying for people who are willing to go down this path that you guys went, to potentially say, yes, I think I might be flexible enough to do that. And I don't know where I'm going to go, but it's about the people. So what would be kind of your helpful tips along the way? I've heard a few things. Flexibility is one.
Willingness.
Willingness.
I would think anybody that would be considering that is somebody that you have to start with the mindset of, okay, God, if you're in this, then that's where I want to be. Regardless of the life changes that may be involved, the mountain that it might look like. But if God's calling it, am I willing to take that step and go that direction? Because then it's exciting. Like I used the surfing analogy, grab your surfboard.
Yeah.
Because once, that's what it's felt like for us. Like once God starts moving and you start seeing his faithfulness, not that there won't be any difficulties or challenges, but when you're in those kind of places, you really see you get to, God is always faithful, but when you're out there on the edge of that and something like that, it becomes even more, you're forced to be even in a more of a place of trusting God.
Yeah.
Because there's so many unknowns and so many challenges.
And I see a team here as well. So it can't just be a one-person journey, at least of being in a marriage together and saying, yes, we are going to do this.
Yeah.
So Evie, I mean, as you see Dennis doing his thing, what tips do you have from a spouse perspective of being along that path?
For me, I looked forward to meeting new people. And seeing where God sent us, like how is He going to grow this? Where was He going to take us next? And who are we going to meet next? And so every Sunday, I was looking forward to meeting new people, and just seeing how what you have to offer is just love and kindness and that welcoming, spirit to say, we want you here. And I was willing to do that. I wanted to meet new people, and have my family grow in a new area. Like we had love to give, and I was ready to give it.
Yep.
So.
And so now fast forward, here you are today. Just give us kind of what you've seen God do through the church, and what is He doing to grow and build Fellowship Bible Church Shenandoah.
Yeah.
Right now, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's neat. We are finally independent from FBC Winchester, so we have our own elder board. There's the elder board has just recently finished going through. We have our own bylaws now, and we have our own mission statement. We going through those initial things you're doing now that you're independent and have your own elder board, and it's exciting. Like it's there's a lot of fun in that, and just it's a different dynamic because it's a much smaller church, right? And it's still a new church. I don't know when we get to stop calling ourselves a new church,
right?
But
I don't know.
but it still feels like a new church.
Yeah.
There's no rules around that. We keep coming back to just a simple idea of our job as a church is equipping saints for the work of the ministry. Our job as elders, pastors, equip saints for the work of the ministry, and just keep simply focused on that. We don't have all the maybe all the resources and programs and things going on that a big church has, and that's okay with us. Like we don't mind just being a simple church that is focused on how do we disciple people well? How do we root people? And so our mission statement is built around 4 key words, and it's all kind of agricultural. Shenandoah is a very agricultural county.
It is. Very farm-based.
So our 4 key principles is having people rooted in the Word of God, growing and loving community. One of the blessings down there, a huge percentage of our congregation are also in community groups. It's like, I think last time we looked, it was like 80%.
Yeah, that's
like
great.
that, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So growing and loving community, fruitful with their gifts. It is neat to talk to people at our church and see what ministries they're involved in. Ministries at the pregnancy center, jail ministry, starting missions work, out at nursing homes, just equipping people to use their gifts to serve in whatever capacity they're gifted to do, and so fruitful with their gifts. And then the final one of our 4 is reproducing those values in others, so discipling one another, and so those are our 4 things that we want to stay focused on, and it's fun. A small church can get away with things that you can't at a big church, where things are looser, and it's just more like a collection of families coming together, and if the microphone stops working in the service and everybody laughs and we keep going,
you know
what I mean?
Yep.
It's just a smaller environment, and that's fun.
Yep.
Like, so you can keep it fun, and
certainly fits with the town, fits with the area.
Yeah, Shenandoah County. We're only a half hour away, but it's definitely a different culture.
Yeah.
The Shenandoah County is much bigger county than Frederick County, but total population of the county is 30,000 people.
Wow.
You got more than that just in the city of Winchester.
Sure.
So it is a definite different culture. A lot of the families, it's always surprising to me how many of the families they work full-time jobs and they have a farmette. They're raising cows and pigs, and so hardworking, and we get a lot of farm fresh eggs given to us, and it's just it's fun, just real down to earth, family oriented people, and so it's a neat community.
Yeah.
We really enjoy
well, I brought up the fact that like there's potentially people who are watching and listening who could be this future church planter or this resident. But I also could say that the people watching and listening could be that Patty Den Hartog, somebody who is tapping somebody in the shoulder and be like, you know what, I see these characteristics in you guys, and have you thought about this, and have you prayed about this? So there's possibility for all of us to have that perspective.
Right.
Something that was from the beginning that we received an invitation to get out of that thing that we were doing here at the beginning, was the invitation to serve, the invitation to be greeters. And I feel like now we are, and what I'm noticing in this community at FBCS is that everybody's invited. If there's something that's happening, and you're being invited to it, you know, let's go to this Bible study, or let's do this ministry, or let's go out to lunch together, or let's be a part of this community. Yeah. It's the invitation is always there.
Very personal. Yeah. No, that's
helpful. With Fellowship's End too, that personal invitation, not being afraid to ask somebody and be praying for them, like the Patty and Dawn. You know, I go back to the lady that ran the children's ministry back in 2000,
asking you to help, right?
Who just said, "Hey, here's a young couple dropping off their kids every Sunday. Why don't you guys come and be greeters?" Yep. You know, that was that. Before that, we were just coming in on a Sunday and leaving. We didn't really know anybody. We weren't meeting anybody.
But as a church planter, somebody is going to have the opportunity to say, "Come."
Yeah, and you need to have those eyes and that perspective of, if there is somebody in the fringe, all it takes is just, hey, come join me with this project. Yeah. Join me with this serving. And I think there's ways that God can use each one of us to draw out others and not just have the focus on ourselves when we come to church on any given Sunday, you know. Right. So it's exciting, and it's
anywhere with that mindset.
That's true. And so the qualifications are: can I be used by God?
Can I be? Yeah. Right. And I go back to me, like, I don't have any qualifications. Like I said, I don't have the normal qualifications needed to be a pastor. But like, okay, if God's going to ask me and I'm willing to do it, then trusting that God's okay with that,
right? You know? Right,
and He can use all of us.
Well, I will say, Fellowship Send is what we're going to be hearing a lot more of here at FBC, and just again, if you're able to come on Sunday night, January 26th at 6:00 at in the main auditorium, you're going to have a night filled of fun, a little bit of food, some games, but more importantly, better understanding where God is calling FBC to be in this church planting world, and then what does it really look like to be a resident? And what does that mean? And honestly, there are a lot of information that you can find on the website right now, which is fellowshipsend.org. You can go there, and you'll see a world of information, especially some of the information of what is a qualification of a church planter, and what does that look like, and what can I do, and what are the next steps, and all the things are there, which you'll learn about this weekend, but also on the website. And McNutts, you guys are a really cool example.
You said January 26th, that evening. What time?
6:00. 6:00.
Oh,
you guys could
might
come.
Be available to come.
It'll be fun. Let me tell you, it's a mystery night. Okay. So that says it all, right? There's going to be some fun game playing that's going to help educate you.
We can't come up on Sunday morning, so we have all of our old friends up here, people we haven't seen, and so it's like we come.
There it is.
It'd be nice to come up and see some
people.
See some people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys once again for being a part of it, and thanks for your story. You know, I hope it inspires and just gives some different perspectives of what you guys went through, but also it can encourage each one of us, because we all have different stories, but God is the same God, and He's still tapping each one of us to call us to say, okay, what's next, and to be flexible for that. Well, just a reminder, everybody, that there are other podcasts out there here at FBC. You can watch the Sermon Spotlight, or there's also the Global Church podcast, so go check those out. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Pass these on to friends, because they might not be knowing about where these stories are being kept, so let them know about that as well. And just remember, this Sunday night, come check it out, the mystery night for Fellowship Send. So maybe you'll see Dennis and Ivette there too. So it'll be exciting. Well, until we do chat again, let's let Christ be the focus of our lives each and every day.